Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Welcome once again to Access to Democracy. Welcome once again to retired Minnesota Supreme Court Justice Paul Anderson. And we're going to pick up where we left off about a month ago because we were talking about the Supreme Court and it's really hit the fan since then.
But your audience should know you're in a light summer jacket, I'm in a light summer, because we're only 10 days out from when the Supreme Court ended its term in the summer of 2022.
And it was a unique, if not frightening, term.
Well, nothing's unique. Yes, it is unique. Their willingness to disregard precedent and the rule of law, I think it is unique. You'd have to go back to Tawney and Dred Scott or some of these cases to get something similar.
And also, the ability to ignore the 14th Amendment, guaranteeing equal protection to everybody, seems to have escaped this court, seems to have escaped it in the abortion case, seems to have escaped it really in the states' rights case, the religion cases. As I'm looking at these decisions,
well, they're originalists. You know, the 14th Amendment wasn't in the original Constitution. Are you listening to what Thomas is saying? You know, is it, hey, they might even say that women don't have the right to vote anymore because it wasn't originally in the Constitution. This is how myopic these people are.
But what he didn't say is that mixed racial marriages should be banned.
Wait a minute. Okay, this is the thing. He said everything about how the law works that provides the basis to overturn that opinion that allows mixed racial marriages. So he said it. I'm going to disagree with you. He didn't mention it specifically, but the way he outlined his view of the law, he basically laid out the case as to why that should not be protected in the Constitution, even though he is part of a mixed-race marriage. I mean, the hypocrisy that is on this court is just tremendous.
You know, there is some question. These people sit for life. We have 7 of them from one religious persuasion who really are imposing.
One of those from that persuasion is liberal, you know.
Yes, but 6 are really imposing the dictates of that religion on the entire country. There's something wrong with that. We have justices mostly from, and I will say that Barrett is excluded from that, as is the newest justice, Jackson, but mostly from either Harvard or Yale law schools. And they really are out of touch, in my opinion, with the country, with the pulse of the country, with the feelings of the country. They're in an ivory tower someplace, and it seems to be cut off from communication with the rest of the country.
The typical track is clerk for a circuit court of appeals, nurture a position to go to the Supreme Court, clerk for the Supreme Court, spend a little time in a silk stocking downtown law firm, get appointed to a federal judgeship. No, wait, there's it helps also if you serve as counsel to a political party's congressional committee. Then get appointed to a judgeship and then go to the Supreme Court. It is a myopic, narrow track of experience. I mean, and Sotomayor put it well, and I think that Justice Jackson gets it. It's the idea is that justices have to have some empathy with the people that they basically serve.
Here's a woman who is a public defender.
Oh, yeah.
She has been in the pit. She knows, dealing day to day. These other justices, for the most part, are so far removed from the average person that the only time they see the average person is when they're picketing their homes.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't want to leave this point because, Alan, you're onto a very key point. These people are interpreting the law for all of us, and if they don't understand who the people are, they're not going to render opinions with common sense. And there's a danger that what they do is they talk to people who are of a similar mind than they are. They're part of that cultural group, and so it feeds on itself, kind of an inside the beltway type thing, and that's the danger to a civil democracy.
It removes them from dealing with the average person. And, you know, the polls show that. Look at the national polls about abortion. Not everybody is in favor of all terms of abortion.
No,
and there's argument about it. But 70% of the country is in favor of abortion.
Don't say in favor of abortion, because nobody
is in favor of the right of abortion.
Yes. The right to terminate a pregnancy in the early stages of that pregnancy. I'm not pro-abortion, and I doubt if you're pro-abortion.
No, but I don't want to tell any other person, especially a woman, or as we just heard today and yesterday, a 10-year-old
girl from Ohio
raped in Ohio and found out that she's pregnant, 10 years old, had to go to another state to get an abortion. That is criminal in and of itself. And then to hear the governor
of South Dakota
say, well, we have to really prosecute this rapist. What about this child? What about this child?
So now I'm going to try and speak as directly as I can to your audience. You have to listen carefully to the language used by these zero-tolerance people. I mean, they'll kind of mushy it up a little bit, and they'll pivot, just like the governor of South Dakota did. When asked, would you favor, abortion, she pivots. They said the wrong is you got to prosecute the rapist, you got to protect children, but would not say that, for the health of this 10-year-old child, you can terminate the pregnancy.
Now, in Jewish law, the right of the mother predominates. So how does the court reconcile the fact that some of these states have no exceptions for rape, incest, or the health of the mother? Where do they come up with that? That's religion, and certainly there is no court that is more religious conscious than this court. Just look at what they did this term. There's 4 cases on religion that they absolutely threw out precedent.
So we got to be careful how we talk about that. If somebody believes that life begins, personality, humanhood begins at the time of the combination of those 2 cells, I'm not going to disagree with them. But what they are is they are in a minority in present United States in the world, and historically they are in the minority. This is a narrow view that started to predominate in the United States beginning in about the 1870s, the Comstock Act, and so they're entitled to their view, Alan, but they can't and they shouldn't impose that view on others. It's a religious view. I'm Presbyterian, you know. My ancestors sponsored public schools for the purpose. What did they do that for? They wanted us to be able to read. And why did they want us to be able to read? So we could read the Bible for ourselves, and we could discuss the Bible among ourselves. And so, you know, I've done that. And I don't agree that life begins and the soul begins at the time of the combination of those two cells. Leonardo da Vinci and history is on my side on this. It comes at a later time. Could come 15, 16 weeks at quickening, could come at 24 weeks at viability. I mean, I'm sorting through as to...
We were taught viability. That was the law for a long time.
Oh yeah, it's the law in Minnesota, you know.
Right. And you certainly can argue that even with medical science being what it is, perhaps they can save a fetus, and I say a fetus, not a child, before
24 weeks.
Maybe they can do it at 20 weeks. But until that child is born, it's not a child, really.
Well, is that I disagree with you. It's there. I think that there is a soul and personhood that is in the mother's body at some time during the latter stages of pregnancy. Now, that doesn't mean that under certain circumstances that entity in the body cannot be expelled and destroyed. You know, if the mother's going to die, hey, the mother, as far as my point of view, has more of a soul than that entity in her body. I'm going to save the mother.
And that's what the Jewish religion provides.
That's the emphasis on the mother, right?
Right, right. And
but see, now we're going to, before we leave this, we're going to circle back to what is really what you started. More and more of the discussion, it's going to be, here's how the discussion is starting about, more and more on women's rights. You're going to see more and more of the discussion that is similar to what was in the mid-19th century, the restoration, the preservation, the rights of the ladies, is that, you know, protecting the mother and the woman. And I am going to predict that, you know, equal protection will emerge as a stronger issue, and looping back to where you started, freedom of religion. It's offensive to me that somebody is imposing their belief on me. You know, the Constitution says that, you know, I have the free right of exercise. Now, I admit that the government has a right to put some limits, but not what they're doing here.
No, I agree. And the 14th Amendment, nor deny any person equal protection of the laws. Well, how do you reconcile that with some of the things that was done in this particular term of the court, 6-3 or 5-4?
See, that equal protection clause, I think that Blackmun should have included that more strongly in the Roe opinion. And our court, I was actually advocating for more language in Minnesota, Doe versus Gomez, on equal protection, because I think that's more firmly rooted in the Constitution.
Let's move to another
unpleasant
topic.
No, I'm going to, before we leave this topic,
okay.
The audience needs to know this. At the current time, a woman's right to abortion at an early stage is protected by Supreme Court opinion.
Yes.
We are, you know, Minnesota is a standout state up in this area, but that can change. The Iowa Supreme Court said that right is in the Constitution. And then you had 7 Republican appointees to that court, and they reversed it. in the next term of the governor who's elected this fall, I think that there are going to be 2 or 3 appointments to the Supreme Court.
Here in Minnesota, you're speaking to.
Barry Anderson terms out by age in October of 26, a month after the new governor after that takes office. Natalie Hudson does. She could leave before that. And then within 6 months, Margaret Chulich would have to leave. But Margaret Chulich is on the ballot a couple of years before that. And so justices sometimes, when they reach 68, 69, and can only run and serve for a year or 2, they'll decide to resign. So whoever we elect as governor in this next election will be very critical to preserving a woman's right in the state of Minnesota. Your audience needs to know that.
And that's a very important point.
Oh,
yes.
yes.
It really is a very important point. I wanted to bring up just briefly the tragic assassination yesterday of former Prime Minister Abe in Japan, because I know you have feelings about that.
Oh, yeah.
In Japan, which had 6 gun deaths in 2014, 2 in 2020, and 2 in 2021, I believe. Here's a man who apparently fashioned his own gun under their very strict laws. What's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, I'm going to have to disclose that I'm not the biggest fan of Shinzo Abe. He was a good prime minister and leader of Japan, but he was a little bit tied to the old Prussian military model of the Japanese-Russo War of the early 19th century. And part of that comes from the fact that his grandfather was the Japanese Governor General of Manchuria and was responsible for horrible atrocities committed against the Chinese people. And he's part of that legacy. Now, I don't want to vest on the grandson, the sins, but it shows that that's, and as I followed his career, he showed that he had a little bit of that thinking that stems from his grandfather's reign. But
did he deserve to be assassinated?
No, absolutely not. And see, I'm just on the phone earlier today to a Norwegian grandniece who's going to come to visit us. They just had a terrible shooting in Norway.
They did.
And they have this assassination of Shinzo Abe. And some people are going to disagree with me on it, but I'm a holder of a firm belief. One of the things that the United States is exporting to the world is this concept of a gun culture.
Violence.
Violence and a gun culture. I mean, we export it. I mean, I was in El Salvador. I was talking to one of the top rebels during the revolution down there, and she told me, I complained a little bit about she said, I don't want my children to watch American movies. There's too many guns and there's too much violence. She says, I know what a gun can do. I've shot people and I've hit people around me. But we export that as a country. So we got to get our act together internally with respect to guns. And we got to be aware is in our role of leadership in the world, we're exporting this type of violence. And I'm going to touch on another thing.
I don't know how we get rid of that mentality.
Well, I'm going to tell you one way
permeating
we can go about it. You got to do it piecemeal, okay? The coroner who's handling the deaths in Illinois, Highland Park, and the coroner who was dealing with those poor children in the Texas school, that he said, we need to speak the unspeakable. And the unspeakable that he was talking about is the damage these bullets do to a human body. He said, you got to see how the body is just absolutely blown and torn apart. These are not normal bullets that are being fired. They're the type of bullets that explode and destroy the body. They cost over $1 a piece. They're not cheap, but they're designed. They're military.
And they put them in weapons of war.
Yes, but they got no place in the civil society. Oh,
That's our problem.
I'm going to, but you know, a strong gun advocate is, I need to have that gun in case the government goes aberrant and I need to defend myself against our government. Now, I'm going to do a transition
Well,
there.
you're guaranteed the right to have that gun.
Oh, yeah, but here's the thing. Who are they worried about? I mean, they'll talk about Nancy Pelosi and whatever. I don't see, I mean, so what, Nancy Pelosi wants broader health care? She wants freer access to the ballot? How about a leader who uses the tools of government, like the IRS, to try get revenge on his enemies? I think we got to pay attention to this as this investigation goes forward with respect
that one
to
is just opening up.
Comey and making.
Thanks to a free press,
Thanks to,
which is really so important.
So if I talk to these people that fear their government, well, where I fear it is right there. People who you support get power and then exploit government, or they promote an insurrection. It said, who do you think that you need your weapons to defend against? And they can't answer that question, basically. So,
well, it's not against Nancy Pelosi, that's for sure.
Although, you know, if they got her, they would have done very bad things to her, as they would have done to Pence.
No question.
At the
And
direction
probably anybody else that they caught. I mean, Angie Craig, who was just interviewed here, talked about the fact that she had to barricade her office during the insurrection, and they were really in fear for 4 hours because they didn't know who was going to break down the door or try.
Now, we're going to run out of time, but I got to touch on a couple of other opinions because we're talking about the Supreme Court came down with an opinion on guns, expanding the right to carry guns, okay? Daniel Farber used to be a professor at the University of Minnesota Law School. Now I think he's at Berkeley or may retire. Wrote an article called The Dead Hand of the Architect. And he told about, you know, an architect designs a building and it's long gone and dies, but that structure of that building mandates how it's used. The same thing is going on with the court and precedent, and so they honor precedent. In the latest Supreme Court opinion on guns, you very much see the dead hand of Antonin Scalia. Scalia thought his opinion in Heller, the Washington, D.C. gun case, was his opus magnus. It wasn't. It's a mishmash. It's based on dogma of the NRA that has been put forth since the mid-20th century, not historically, okay? And so...
but at least it did speak of reasonable regulations.
Yeah.
That language is in there someplace.
That's in Heller.
Yeah.
But they're, but we're being influenced by thinking that it's not well-founded. If you want to fully understand where the constitutional right of guns stands in the United States, you should read Stevens' dissent in Heller. He got it right. He protects an individual's right, but he does it in a reasonable fashion. So we got another aberrant out of it. Now we got to go to climate control.
And another judge, when you speak of Stevens, who was not a flaming liberal.
Yeah. Come on. Stevens came out of corporate America.
That's correct.
His father ran a hotel on the Chicago lakefront. I mean, and he's kind of a silk stocking downtown. He's not a flaming liberal. But, you know, okay.
We've only got 5 minutes.
He had some common sense. And as what we talked about earlier, his background was that he had some real interaction with real people. And that helped inform his opinions.
Which we were talking about
earlier.
Previously. Now let's get to West Virginia against the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a case that just opened us up to damage by climate change.
That opinion is a betrayal of the mandate given to us as a country by our founders. Now you can say, oh, did they talk about it? No, our founders said government has the responsibility to provide the maximum opportunity for the maximum people in a civil democracy to seek happiness. I am going to submit to you, if you can't breathe or if your water's polluted, it's going to interfere with your happiness, sir. And that's what the court has done. It said, well, we don't care about your welfare, your happiness, whatever. We're going to gut the ability of government to say...
The reasoning was so ludicrous that Congress created the EPA to handle the environment, and they're saying, but the EPA can't handle the environment on serious issues unless it goes back to Congress. Well, if something goes back to Congress, it can sit there and lie fallow for years. That was the whole purpose of the creation of the EPA. And, you know, water is going to be the next thing.
Oh, yes.
That's going to be...
I mean, we're sitting here in Dakota County. I mean, one of the things is, you know, those southern states want our water. You know, and we got to keep our water pure, and we got to make sure that our water's here available for our people.
And there's going to be a novel that's going to be available not too long, which focuses on the EPA and the attack on water. But we'll leave it there.
No, we won't leave it there, Alan, because you asked me to review, or not to review, to read, because it focuses on the Supreme Court, United States. You asked me to read it to give my opinion. Alan, it's a good novel. It's well done. It shows your knowledge of the inner workings of government. But you know, one of the things I liked about it most? I liked your characters. They were real. They were real human beings, talented, but ordinary human beings caught up in the midst of a big event, and they come through for our country and their fellow citizens in a marvelous way. So,
well, thank you.
It's good. It's good. I enjoyed it. It's a good read.
Holding Court, which hopefully will be out before the end of the year.
It'd be a good Christmas present.
And
God, I'm shameless, aren't I, to plug it? But, you know, I wouldn't if I didn't like the book. I really like the book.
Well, I really appreciate that. We've only got a minute and a half left, and I know one of your least favorite people is Mitch McConnell. So why don't we close with your assessment of Mitch McConnell?
Mitch McConnell is the architect of the current dysfunction and inability to serve the people that we have on our Supreme Court. He's proud of his legacy. I refer to him, he's basically amoral, because for Mitch McConnell, the bottom line is power, and having power to use it for his own personal purposes. And then when you combine that amorality that you have with his lack of ethics, I mean, I coined a phrase, and I don't know if others will pick up. I view him as an ethical pygmy. With all due apologies to this tribe from Central Congo, he is an ethical pygmy, and in some ways, he makes it worse because he seems to accept that title. We can't have leaders like that. That's why these upcoming elections are so important. Can I finish on one point?
We've got 30 seconds. You've got it.
George Will, conservative writer, Republican leaning, if not Republican, okay? Big defender of the two-party system, is so disillusioned with the current Republican leader. What he recommends to Republicans is, in the short term, vote for Democrats. And then if you vote for Democrats...
With that,
they can restructure their party. They can reform it and recapture the party I knew.
We are thanking Paul Anderson, retired Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court. As usual, a frequent guest, a welcome guest. And again, thank you so much.
As usual, we ran out of time.
And then some. Yeah, we ran over 15 seconds.